the gay rights movement had a few things to say about being transgender. Let me state it categorically. There is no such thing as a male or female personality. Personality is not a function of gender. So where does this put the concept of transgender? In my view, down the tubes. One of Ron Gold's apologists, Wayne Dines, responded to the uproar about Ron's burblings. As a noted West Coast queer author, you might think that he would offer some inspirational words to encourage unity and dialogue within the community. Instead, he suggested that the trans community's efforts in GLBT rights is negligible, and the TG community tries to make its role in queer rights movement seem more than what it is. He went on to opine that the trans and GLBT community are two different things and should not be talked about together. That people need to stop using the acronym GLBTQ. That transgender people are only crossdressers and drag queens. That transgender people drag the gay community down. And that transgender people didn't do any of the political work and are riding on the coattails of gay people. Well, what about Magnus Hirschfeld? What about the transgender gay man who invented sexology and laid the academic foundation for the removal of homosexuality from the DSM? Christine Jorgensen. She was the first to use mass media in the form of her 1958 LP to talk about the legitimacy of GLBT rights. Or Congressional Medal of Honor recipient Mary Edwards Walker, who did a ton of work on behalf of the suffragette movement, was militantly genderqueer. Oh, she was arrested more than once for cross-dressing, and openly challenged the very notion of American gender stereotypes. So those are three people off the top of my head that were pretty significant in the GLBT rights movement. Oh, and speaking of militant trans folk, what about the first queer riot? In 1958, trans folk were there instigating a riot side by side with their gay brothers at Cooper's Donuts in LA after the cops harassed them. The first queer sit-in. In 1965, trans folk instigated the action at Dewey's lunch counter after owners began refusing to serve transgender people. Or the Compton's cafeteria riot. In 1966, trans folk instigated the San Francisco riot that gave birth to the San Francisco queer rights movement. Or Stonewall. In 1969, after police began harassing genderqueer people, trans folk sparked the riot that gave birth to National Militant Gay Rights Action. Now, how about early national queer leaders? Were any of them trans? Let's ask the grandfather of the gay rights movement, because he was there and he has first-hand knowledge.
But of the 18 people, including Rita and David and I, that went to the North American Conference of Homophile Organizations in 1968, David and I and two others survived. That was the national leadership.
Whenever that took place, were there anybody, I know that the language has changed a lot over the years, but was there anyone there that might be...
considered now trans? Yeah, sure.